Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our continuing series where we review every Capcom play system, Dash, CPS2, and CPS3 game ever made. And today we're doing a compilation video for the 3 Street Fighter games on the play system, starting off with the original, The World Warrior. Now I will say right off the bat, I am not very good at Street Fighter. I think the series is great, I just don't play it all that often. So if you're watching the gameplay and thinking, wow, I suck, it's probably because I do suck. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below and hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down there as well. But there's no understating how big of a contribution the Street Fighter series has brought to arcade games, to the fighting game genre, and to video games in general. And for that I 100% recognize its historical place, significance, and awesomeness. And I don't even dislike the game, I think it's a great game. I've just never been that good at it, don't ask me why. I've been playing the King of Fighters since they started coming out, and I have the entire collection on my Neo Geo AES 94 to 2003, and I have every other King of Fighters game ever released. I also like playing a lot of the Arc System Works games like Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear. I'm pretty decent at those too. I just have never been able to figure out how to play Street Fighter effectively against the computer or other opponents, and I'm not too worried about that. I don't need to be great at every single game. I could recognize them for the importance and what they are without actually having to be that good at them. What I really like is how Capcom iterates on these games. Sometimes now when they sell you a new copy for consoles, it can kind of feel like double and triple dipping, but something like this in arcades, they just upgraded the boards, they sent out new ROMs, they just increased what Street Fighter could do, and you didn't have to buy a brand new arcade board. Well, I mean, you did if you were the arcade operator, but that's a business. As a consumer, you just go put your quarters in the new machine, and you're not really having any other money taken from you. But everything about Street Fighter 2 is iconic, from the character designs to the backgrounds to the music. This is basically video game history in motion, and you can't go wrong playing any of these games. Of course, Turbo Hyper Fighting is probably going to be the one I'd recommend because it's the latest revision. It speeds up the gameplay, and we'll be checking it out soon. But all of these characters and backgrounds, I remember these as a kid, even though I'm not very good at the game, and all the little details. You're in a stage in Russia and someone's definitely drinking a bottle of vodka. It's a little bit shticky, but it's definitely what you think when you think of, like, you know, the early 90s sort of tropes about what Russia was, you know, the Rocky movies with Ivan Drago. It's definitely kind of how, you know, the Soviet Union and Russia was perceived. But it's still a great game, and it's fun to talk about, and it's fun to check out. We're going to be very quickly moving into the next game in the series, and that's going to be as follows. Street Fighter 2. What the hell is it called again? I forgot. Let's see what it is. It is Championship Edition. I really did actually forget that, so I'll just leave it in. That way you know how much I know about Street Fighter. But we have an expanded roster, we have more characters, and Bison is available. Now I can't think about M. Bison without thinking of Raul Julia in the movie. The movie is not very good. The arcade game based on the movie is even worse. But as a character, he's just absolutely iconic. But the music is also great in Street Fighter, so go ahead and enjoy it for just a second. I'm sure you've heard it, but you probably want to hear it again. And I'll come back in about 45 seconds to tell you more about why I'm just not that good at these games. Enjoy! You just can't go wrong with the Street Fighter soundtrack, especially when you get later into your life bar, your opponent's life bar, and everything speeds up. They're just absolutely iconic tracks. And speaking of iconic, Chun-Li's background here is just one of those things. I can close my eyes and think about this and pretty much know 90% of what's there in my imagination, because even if I'm not good at Street Fighter, I have played a ton of it. And I will say that things like Third Strike in the Alpha series, I am much better at. I think that's just because they maybe play a little bit more like King of Fighters games. Controversial controversial statement. Maybe I'm totally off base on that, but I feel like I can just connect with them more. But again, Street Fighter 2, it's an awesome franchise, and I wish I could get better at it. Maybe I just need to practice more, but I've just never really clicked with it. But I'm sure you guys have games like that too. There's probably a popular franchise or a popular fighting game out there that everyone loves, that when you play, you just don't really feel like you're meshing with it the same way that you should be. And that's just kind of the thing about video games. They're very subjective, and what one person thinks is the best fighting game of all times, other people might think, that's fine, I can take it or leave it. And that's kind of how I feel with Street Fighter 2 as far as getting better at it. But playing for this captures a ton of fun. I love all these little stories that you get in between rounds. It definitely does a lot. And obviously, you know, Capcom has been very successful with the series. We're on Street Fighter 5, and I'm sure 6 is probably a couple years down the road now that we have new consoles. And you will see that there are minor changes between versions. You know, we're fighting Zangief again. The music's slightly different. The colors are slightly changed. It's basically the same thing, but it's just more of a good thing because it gives you extra characters, the availability to play mirror matches. Capcom was smart to continually release this game because people wanted more of it. What the most interesting thing and what I love about this version, Hyper Fighting, the Turbo Edition, is that there were board hacks out there that actually sped up the gameplay, Rainbow Edition and things like that. From a historical standpoint, it's really interesting how often these games are bootlegged and why there's so much more security on the Capcom CPS2. But what did Capcom do when they realized that these bootleg versions are actually becoming more popular with players than their actual boards? Well, they just copied the bootlegs, sped up the gameplay, and made the Turbo Edition and gave you something completely new. It's probably one of the best instances where, you know, hackers and bootleggers actually added something into a game that the company that made the game then took and decided to run with, and people really loved it. And if you are going to play one version of Street Fighter 2, if for some strange reason you've never played it before, I recommend Turbo, Hyper Fighting, whatever you want to call it. It is, to me, the subjectively best version of the game. And I think the fact that it actually plays a little bit faster means that I'm ever so slightly better at the game. That's not to say that I've gotten good at it. I just suck slightly less than what we've seen so far on the gameplay side of things for this video. And I played Street Fighter 4, I played Street Fighter 5, I thought they were, you know, fine. I just want an Alpha 4. I want the classic 2D sprite animation of that series back. That's the type of thing that I would really love to play again, and it seems like the one series that Capcom really isn't interested in giving us more of, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But you can't argue about how influential Street Fighter 2 was. These games in arcades had lines at them. It was this and Mortal Kombat were the two fighting games that you had the option to play in pretty much every arcade that you saw. These machines were at laundromats. They were at bowling alleys. Any place where adults or kids might have a couple quarters in their pockets, they would shove an arcade cabinet for Street Fighter into. That's how prolific this game is. And even today, you know, there's a huge audience for, you know, cabinets of Street Fighter 2 and PCBs. But now that we're in E-Honda stage, I will say that this is one of my favorite backgrounds from any fighting game ever, especially when the match ends. I love that it's in the onsen. I love that you have Mount Fuji in the background with the rising sun flag that lights up and animates, as obviously I lost there, did not win. To me, this is just iconic, and even if I'm not great at the game, I just love playing on this stage. But you tell me, and I'm sure you'll tell me I'm wrong. Like, what am I missing here? Why can't I connect with Street Fighter 2? What should I try to do differently? Because from my perspective, I can usually never get past the third stage playing against the CPU, even on normal. Short of that, we will have a video on the same series next week. We got plenty more Capcom Play System stuff coming up for you, and I'll have videos throughout the week on different topics as well. Like I mentioned earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined, we got that Patreon link down below. Short of that, I have lost. I always lose at Street Fighter. It just seems to be what happens. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.